Show your support. Subscribe to the podcast.
Hello, I am that British guy, and welcome to another edition of NXT Talk, where we run through the events of the 23rd of May's episode of NXT. And wow, basically, to start off with, what can we say? It appears that 2 is the magic number for this episode. But before we get into that, something I did not expect to hear was a reference to Manchester City and the English Premier League and their dominance this season. So that was a bit of a weird thing to hear from Mauro. I mean, first off, they weren't that dominant towards the end of the season, but hey, they won the league, I suppose. So yeah, that was a surprise. Anyway, NXT itself, yeah, very much centred around the number 2. So yes, it was the second NXT match involving Velveteen Dream and Ricochet. Obviously they had their other match at TakeOver with everybody else in the ladder match, but specifically focused in on this storyline. This time they were teaming up rather than going one-on-one and facing off against Lars Sullivan. So we had that element, and obviously the handicap element and the 2 involved there, and the fact that actually the 2 lost thanks to Velveteen Dream. It was a really interesting way of working that in, because I didn't realise what had happened until after it had happened. I didn't actually see the tag, it just looked like a slip off the rope. Very, very well controlled by Dream to not hurt himself, but also very good to make it look like that had sort of put him in jeopardy, and that's why he kind of snapped right at the end, because they were working as a very, very good unit, those 2. It's very nice to see them working together, Dream and Ricochet against Sullivan. And it was mentioned on commentary earlier that if Lars Sullivan was to win that match, then surely he must be in line for an NXT title match. And we've got Aleister Black coming back next week, so presumably that's to possibly start setting something up there, because he has only made 1 appearance, I believe, since TakeOver. And strangely enough, no one seems annoyed at the fact that he is not on NXT every week, or at least every other week. Probably because he's a likeable character, and he's very good in the ring. I know NXT is only an hour long, and you can't have everybody every single week or even every other week because the roster's quite full at the moment. But yeah, people don't seem to be too bothered about that. Certainly not in the same way that they are bothered about the fact that they don't see the Universal title every week on Raw, but apples and oranges, I suppose. So I'm, yes, presuming that that's where this leads. We see Lars Sullivan come out and either attack Black or confront him and challenge him, because we are... What are we, 3 weeks away? 4 weeks away, I think. 3 weeks away from Chicago? Should probably have looked on a calendar before pressing record, but there we go. 3 or 4 weeks. What is it, the 16th? It's 3 weeks, yeah. So we probably kind of need to start building up towards that. Black certainly needs another match before then. And it wouldn't hurt for Sullivan to have another match as well, presuming that's the way they're going to go. This also means that you can keep Ricochet and Velveteen Dream sort of in a program together, either at TakeOver or just before it, and we actually see a conclusive winner, presumably Ricochet, seeing as this is his first proper feud, but who knows. So yeah, element of 2 there, very, very nicely done, very, very well worked match, and very interesting to see how this goes forward. Could even possibly get some Teddy Long style holla holla tag team player. Ricochet and Black versus Sullivan and Dream. It's not usually something that they do in NXT, but you never know. Could be interesting. Yeah. So there's that element. Talking of titles, we also got the setup for next week, the women's title match. Shayna Baszler versus Dakota Kai, which I must say is coming earlier than I expected it to. But then with another 3 weeks of programming, it would have been quite difficult to drag that out to Chicago. And it's nice to see these bigger matches sometimes played out on weekly TV rather than just loading everything for TakeOver when you can only really get 5 matches on a card anyway because of the length of it. So the week-to-week programming does need these kind of things, and funnily enough, again in this sort of story and scenario, this will be their second match, so another element of 2. No mention of Nikki Cross, no sign of her, so will she possibly be at ringside during the match? Could be interesting to see her there coaching Dakota and trying to get that victory for her or alongside her. Could be interesting to see whether that then leads into Dakota versus Nikki, maybe some kind of distraction issue or some kind of tension between the 2 of them. Who knows? Keeping on the women's division as well, we also had the second match between Kairi Sane and Lacey Evans, which again I was surprised that it came this early, but as I've already said, we can't keep dragging everything out for Chicago because, I mean, chances are you're going to have 4 title matches. And you're probably going to have Johnny versus Tommaso, so there's your 5 matches. So you can't have all these other bits and pieces going on at TakeOver. They've got to happen beforehand, and they're now 1 apiece. And wow, what a showing this was from both of them. It made sense within the story that they were telling as well, that Kairi Sane was going to be that explosive right from the beginning. And Lacey Evans, as I said last week, was calculated and precise and definitely not in a boring Randy Orton kind of way. Certainly not a Randy Orton 2017, 2018 kind of way. More in a Randy Orton sort of 2003 kind of way, or 2004-5 kind of way. Very, very very punishing. There was a time where she was holding Sane in kind of a chin lock with her arm tucked in as well, and rather than just kind of shaking her a bit, she was actually shaking her, or appearing to shake her head into her own knee just to apply a bit more punishment to her. And I mean, if that's not sort of cold and precise and just brilliant, to be honest, then I don't know what is. You had the kind of comeback cut off completely because of the rolling out of the ring. Brilliant ring smarts there as well from her. Again, the kind of thing that a conniving, sneaky, underhanded heel would do. And then the forearm elbow as Sane came off the off the turnbuckle at the end was just brilliant. And again, they called that, came out of nowhere. Very, very akin to an RKO. She just seems like a more focused, more vicious version of a younger Randy Orton. It's really nice to see. And as I said, they're 1-for-1 now, so presumably we'll get a rubber match possibly in the next couple of weeks. Whether the winner of that then goes on to face Baszler, probably not, because I don't know. I think Sane and Baszler is maybe a bit too early. Don't know. But then I suppose if Baszler wins that, they're 1-1 against each other if you count the Mae Young Classic. So that kind of drags that out then to SummerSlam time. So that might be then the time for Sane to win the belt, possibly. Not sure. So yeah, that then again could lead into our magical power of 2 again. So who knows? Our opening match, Heavy Machinery versus TM61. Now this was twos all over. It was a second consecutive loss for Heavy Machinery. Last time it was a lot more clean, if you like. They were just sort of outdone by War Raiders, and this time it led back into TM61's previous match against the Street Profits, where there was the win because of a roll-up pin, feet on the ropes, and being held down by Shane Thorne. And again, we saw that here. Brilliantly done. Again, the matches this week were really, really good just on their own, but the stories that they were telling within them led into potential things in the future. They drew from historical points as well. They were just really, really well performed by very skilled performers. All three matches. It was just really, really nice to see decent wrestling and decent storytelling again on the NXT roster. And to be honest, when you see this on a week-to-week basis and you're comparing it to the likes of a 2-move match from Lana and Billie Kay, yeah, okay, I guess Lana kind of was over with the crowd purely because of Rusev, really. But that's the kind of match that you're getting, yippee. Or you're getting the wonderful Bobby Lashley's sisters bit on Raw. That's just absolute dirge storytelling, and you don't get either of that from the developmental brand, which seems absolutely ludicrous to me. And I know I say it every week, and I don't want to sound like a broken record and keep harping on about it, but it really is. It's making me care about Raw and SmackDown less and less on a weekly basis, to the point where I might just completely shut myself off from it entirely. Couple that with the fact that, okay, Ember Moon looked good in her match against Alexa Bliss, fine. No Authors of Pain again. Drew McIntyre, former NXT champion, was just sort of there in Dolph Ziggler's match and hit a Claymore kick at the end. Yeah, Authors of Pain weren't there at all. Still no Sanity. Another jobber match for Andrade Cien Almas. And I really hope that's actually building into a storyline rather than just, we kind of need him on TV, so let's do that. Yeah, Billie Kay loses in 2 moves, so I believe neither of the Iconics now, unless there's some kind of a last chance match on SmackDown, possibly, but I think there's only 1 slot left, and they've said that the last chance match is on Raw. So neither of the Iconics are going to be in the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Cool, that makes them look good right from the off. The only thing they've done is attack Charlotte so that Carmella could win the belt and then lost. Great. Like, what is the point of calling all these people up? I read something today that said the reason that Sanity haven't arrived yet and that Authors of Pain have showed up, I think, twice and are now competing on Main Event every week is because the writers have got nothing for them. What was the point of calling them up then? Oh, look, you're promoted to Raw and SmackDown. that'll be good for you, and then you do nothing. And that initial buzz of them being called up, because either you've got people that watch NXT on a weekly basis and know who these people are and are really excited to see them now flourish on the main roster with the bigger established stars and winning kind of the seen as the more legitimate belts, because they've obviously got a lot more history to them, and they're not on the developmental brand. They go completely cold on them within a month or two because they're never featured. What is the point? We still don't know why the Authors of Pain got rid of Paul Ellering. It's not ever been addressed, because presumably they haven't worked that out yet. They don't know. Terrific. Like, yeah. If I were the likes of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa and Adam Cole and Aleister Black and Shayna Baszler and Kairi Sane and the rest of the Undisputed Era, and even Ricochet and War Raiders and EC3 that have just come in, everyone's saying like EC3 is a good example of that actually. Why is he in NXT? Maybe he's took a look at what the main roster product is and was like, nah, put me back in NXT please, because I don't want to come back and be Bobby Lashley. Ooh, yeah, Bobby Lashley's back. And then, look, he's beating up men dressed as his blooming sisters after, 3 weeks back or 4 weeks back or whatever it is. And, yeah, he appears at the first pay-per-view after WrestleMania in a buffer match, in a nondescript, pointless tag match, which was purely to get Braun Strowman on the card. Like, what on earth are they doing? I get that they've got to write something week to week, and sometimes plans change, people get injured, a la possibly Big Cass, and that's kind of thrown those things there up in the air. But, I mean, come on, they're paid a lot of money because they're supposed to be experienced writers that have these kind of these kind of progressive, good, new, interesting ideas, and they're doing the same shtick month after month after month, it seems. The biggest thing on the main roster at the moment is Seth Rollins, and he's technically not in a storyline. His storyline is, I am a fighting, defending Intercontinental Champion. Oh, we haven't seen that before, have we, at all, with either the Intercontinental or the US title. It's like, that's just the generic mid-card title. If you're a babyface, that's your shtick. Oh, I'm the fighting champion. Great. I mean, it's nice to see him have a good match every week, but just can't wait for Dean Ambrose to come back, turn heel on him, and start a kind of blood feud akin to Johnny and Tommaso. So at least it'll be interesting. Anyway, that was a massive tangent that I promised I wasn't going to do, because it was mainly about ragging on the main roster, and I don't want to do that. But you see my point. This is why I'm covering NXT all the time, because otherwise everything would be just mega negative. So, talking of Johnny and Tommaso, what a lovely last section that was. What a brilliant main event to the show, effectively. Now, the previous week, Tommaso did a beautifully evil thing and really trolled the crowd by coming out to Johnny's music, and his music hit and the crowd went mad, and then they saw him and went mad in a completely different way. This time, I know obviously these were all recorded in segments, so it was probably recorded on the same day, but this time his music plays nothing at all, because they're expecting Tommaso Ciampa to come out to it. Then Candice LeRae comes out, and they're like, hang on, there was a section played earlier where Candice and Johnny were arriving together, so is she coming out to his music now for some reason? Is she telling us that something's happened? And then as soon as Johnny Gargano came out, the crowd just went mad for him. Cheering as per. It seems that the more hated Tommaso Ciampa is, the more beloved Johnny Gargano is, and then the more beloved he becomes, the more evil and hated Ciampa is seen, and they're just fueling each other's character so beautifully well. I mean, I was a bit kind of, don't think this should be main eventing TakeOver New Orleans because it's not the NXT title match, but this is probably the one and only thing at the moment and in a long time, and probably for a long time to come, that should be superseding the title match, purely because it's so good. Last week, obviously, there was the confrontation between Ciampa and Candice, and I said that I kind of wanted him to look like he was kind of gonna slap her back in a fit of rage and for her to kind of withdraw. We got one better when Johnny was goaded back into the ring, climbed up on the apron and was pushed off into her for her to fall onto the metal ramp and be seemingly knocked out. I mean, that is brilliant, because Ciampa now has that over Johnny because he's managed to injure his wife, but he's also got the kind of heelish get out of jail free card because he was actually aiming for Johnny, and it was Johnny's fault that he fell off the apron and into his own wife. So you've got that whole, actually I'm vindicated in what I've done, I didn't do anything wrong, I'm not the bad guy here, you were the one that fell into her. It's brilliantly done. So yes, it adds brilliant extra fuel to the fire for them, makes it a little bit more personal. It's hopefully as well, this will be enough to get Candice out of the feud if she's kind of taken out until after Chicago, and then when she comes back, if that's then kind of done, at least for the time being, she can come back and be her own character. That is the one and only negative out of this this whole scenario, is at the moment she is just Mrs. Johnny Gargano, rather than her own legitimate competitor. She's had all of 2 matches, one against Zelina Vega where Johnny and Andrade were both at ringside, so there was that no separation between the two of them, and her other match a few weeks ago against Bianca Belair, and again they were playing off the whole, it was just after Johnny's had been attacked by Ciampa, so she had that kind of going on in her head, so again it was still kind of harking back to the Ciampa Gargano feud, rather than looking at her as her own person, doing her own thing, having her own career. So I think that's the only real negative that I've got with this at the moment, is purely because she's having to be so heavily involved because of needing that difference, because Johnny's then got this personal side of him, whereas Tommaso is just seen as kind of this monster, the kind of inhuman type character, because there's no close people around him because he's driven them both away, whereas obviously you've got the husband and wife dynamic of Johnny and Candice, so hopefully that will separate her from this now. It will give another element to the feud as well, makes it even more personal, if it could even get more personal, and then hopefully they can go their separate ways for the time being. I'm not really sure how you would go about that, because one would presumably have to be kept off TV, or maybe it is time for a call up. And I really hope that when they do get called up, one goes to Raw and one goes to SmackDown, and they are kept well away from each other. Otherwise this will become the Kevin Owens Sami Zayn storyline, where they face each other every single pay-per-view, every single week on Raw or SmackDown, with seemingly no end in sight, and then they say, hey, it's the last match ever, and then they keep doing that match anyway. And I really, really don't want them to turn into that, because they need more than that. So, yeah, and I mean, in terms of a power of two, what two people are more important and bigger stars at the moment in NXT than these two? They're just fueling each other's character so much. As I say, the bigger babyface Johnny gets, the more of a heel Tommaso becomes, and vice versa. And they're working the crowd beautifully. Johnny Gargano was even getting yes chants at some point when he was asking the crowd whether it was worth it. They weren't just saying yes, they were giving him the proper Daniel Bryan treatment of a yes chant, which links in brilliantly to a video that I actually did on my YouTube channel a couple of months back, before, I might add, before Daniel Bryan was cleared to wrestle again, basically kind of saying that, look, he's never going to wrestle for WWE again, so let's kind of put that to bed, but we're starting to see that Johnny Gargano is going to become the new Daniel Bryan. How brilliant is it going to be when we've got both of them there, two proper beloved baby faces, and proof that you can build and maintain, I think that's the thing as well, actually maintain beloved babyface characters, that you don't have to turn them heel all the time just to get them over with the crowd. Ricochet was so much more over with the crowd this week than he was last time, because they're growing, or he's growing on them. They're becoming used to him in an NXT ring, seeing him more and more often. And yes, okay, they were cheering for Velveteen Dream as well, but he was kind of technically playing a babyface role because he was going against Lars Sullivan, so it sort of made sense. But this time it didn't overshadow Ricochet, which was exactly what you wanted. Heavy Machinery, especially Dozovic, is massively over with the crowd. Again, babyfaces. They don't look like conventional babyfaces. You look at them and think, those two are monsters. Let's have them as heels tearing each other apart. But that's not... It's kind of like the NXT version of Braun Strowman, almost. So you can create these characters, and if you can do it with your developmental brand, you sure as hell can do it with your main brand. So please, let's actually see it happen here. But yeah, that is kind of this week's NXT in a nutshell. Please join the discussion and let me know what you thought of it, and where you see bits and pieces going towards Chicago. Presumably we're going to see a Shayna Baszler retention next week against Dakota Kai. Presumably we're going to see some kind of face-to-face between Lars Sullivan and Aleister Black is my guess. The Roderick Strong Danny Burch match next week as well, how is that going to play into a potential tag match at Chicago, which I presume we are going to get, seeing as they beat them in a six-man tag match. I'm assuming Danny is going to pull out the win here, and that's going to solidify their title match for Undisputed Era to probably retain, I would have thought. Yeah, and going forward, who is going to be the next person to challenge for the North American title? Please let it be Pete Dunne. Please let it be Pete Dunne. Possibly even a title match, but probably not. But you never know. As I say, please let me know what you think of things. As always, don't forget to check out my YouTube channel as well. There's lots of other bits and pieces on there, gaming wise and WWE wise. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Rightly Wrongly, and on Facebook /ThatBritishGuy86. But until next week, I've been That British Guy, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.